Good day, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of Why You Do What You Do by the Building Industry Association's Bay Area Young Professionals. I am your host, Mark Sherlock. Today's guest is an award-winning architect and fellow of the American Institute of Architects. Please welcome Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Geopogo, Dave Alpert.
Dave, it's a pleasure to meet you. How are you doing today?
Fine. Great to talk to you.
So, Dave, I gave you a brief description of the format. We got 3 questions for you. Answer them however you like, and we'll get started. So, Dave, how did you get to CEO and co-founder of Geopogo?
Okay, well, I got to make myself CEO because I had an idea that I have implemented, and I'm following it through the execution to a successful company. So that's pretty exciting for me. My background before that was that I was a practicing architect. So I was very familiar with the design and construction process. And in mid-career, I earned an MBA while I was working full-time at Gensler. And that gave me a new perspective from the owner's side. I would say that it always seemed to me before then that the project started when it came to me in the architecture office. But then with my MBA and my subsequent experience working on the owner side, I discovered all the stuff that happens before they even call up an architect. All the decisions that need to be made, what do they need, why do they need it, how much do they have to spend on it, and when do they need it to be completed, and then they bring it to an architect. And sometimes they actually do even more front-end working with conceptual design, with entitlements, and it's more humbling as an architect to see what the owner actually does behind the scenes. So that's to be a CEO.
Yeah. So could you give me a brief description of Geopogo? I'm going to go a little off script here, but I want to learn a little bit more about Geopogo.
Oh, okay. So Geopogo is 3D visualization tools that are focused on design and construction, because that's the industry that I know, and that's the industry that my co-founder, my copy, the creative director knows. And we both had a lot of experience working on so many projects where, as hard as we worked and our teams worked, there was a lot of inefficiency in communication. And it was partly because we had trained ourselves in 3D visualization. That was part of our craft, but the other stakeholders on the project couldn't visualize it the same way that we did. So sometimes there were misconnections. The clients, the owners, and the end users wouldn't understand really what the design was until it was under construction. Now, we've had a number of owners, major owners of global properties tell us that typically at 80 or 85%, that's when all the changes start coming, because that's when their end users understand what's being built. And so that's part of what contributes to the inefficiency of the industry. One of the reasons why the efficiency is dropping. And that's totally out of line with all the other industries, which are becoming more efficient. So, I mean, if we care about design and construction, which we do as architects, we have to do whatever we can to turn that around. And one way to turn that around is to democratize visualization a little bit. Like I mentioned, that's part of our craft. We can visualize things in 3D. Although, just as a quick digression, one of the technology leaders that we have worked with in an architecture office says he thinks only 10% of the architects he works with can really visualize what they're designing. No, there's some question there, just the same. But anyway, it's possible for everyone to fully visualize the design now using augmented reality. And with our software tools, what we can do is we can take any BIM file, ideally an Autodesk Revit file, and instantly convert it to a full-size model on site. So that whatever you're planning to do, you can tour inside and out with the client before any money is invested in construction. And that is reminding me that McKinsey, maybe you're aware of the report that McKinsey did recently on construction and the inefficiencies in it. They calculated that $1 billion is wasted every day on construction rework, just like I'm talking about.
Yep.
The project is 80 or 85% complete, and then the users want to change it. And so much of that can be avoided. I could never honestly say that all of it can be avoided, because sometimes if people know what it is to begin with, they'll still change their mind afterwards. But we worked on one project with a global tech company in the South Bay, and their users had already reviewed the design with the designers and signed off on it, but they decided, oh, let's take one more look at it. And so with augmented reality, the end users walked through the facility and they discovered it wasn't what they needed, and that they were going to have to move and relocate things during construction. And so they fixed it all before anything was started. And they said they saved $250,000 that day. So that was a good proof point, because
Yeah.
you know, when you come up with an idea like we have of translating ideas into a virtual model, then you need all the encouragement you can get. Change is hard. Change is very hard to effect. Everybody's used to doing things the way they're comfortable doing them.
Yep.
And when I think back to all the changes I've seen during my career in the profession, we're not doing things at all like we used to do them.
No.
But we're still not nearly as far along as we need to be.
Yeah.
And our industry is kind of antiquated compared to other industries. There's still the idea of like the gentleman architect and the craftsman builder, and it doesn't have to be that way. I think there's a lot more opportunity for collaboration. Sorry if I'm going on too long.
No,
But you know, I think about different professions, and architects often compare themselves with doctors and lawyers, and why don't we have as much respect? Why aren't we paid as much? So I'm looking at the medical profession, and I'm old enough to remember that doctors did not used to be your partners. They used to be the ones who held the information, and they decided what you needed to know and what you didn't need to know. And the less you were involved in your care, the better, because you would just get in the way, because you weren't an expert. They were the expert. And thankfully, that's not true anymore. Thankfully, the medical profession has changed so that the patient is a partner in their care. And there's a lot more transparency than there used to be. That's the way design and construction has to go in the future. We have to look at clients as being our partners, and we need to, you know, get out from behind the curtain and let them in on the process more than we have in the past. And that will be part of solving the problem of inefficiency, is a change in attitude.
Yeah.
In order to support that change in attitude, you need products which are easy enough for non-professionals to use. And you need to be communicating the design in a way that's absolutely literal. And there's nothing more literal than a full-size on-site model.
Exactly. That's a great example, Dave. And I appreciate you going into detail there. Truly.
Sure.
As somebody who has explored augmented reality, who's somebody who's played and built their own apps like that, I totally understand where you're coming from. We work in an older industry that probably avoided technology for a little too long. And as somebody who clearly can visualize those products, there's some people who can't until it's finally constructed. So I appreciate the detail. So Dave, second question. What was the most inspirational moment that has shaped your career path?
It's hokey. I was an undergraduate student at UC Berkeley. I was in letters and science. I was undeclared. Even though as a kid, I was always crazy about architecture and buildings, I decided that there were a lot of other things to pursue as a career. But I was sitting in the library late at night studying for an exam, and I came across this statement, and it was regarding Roman architecture, that architecture was the integration of art and science. And that is the moment, swear to God, when I decided, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be an architect because I like that. And yeah, it's always been that way. But I mean, science can mean a lot of different things to different people. And as an architect, in order to be licensed, you have to study structural engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, that kind of stuff. The truth is, as a practicing architect, you rarely do any engineering.
Yep.
So the science part of it, I think, has to do with the rationality and the logic that you use as a designer. And also the way that you collaborate with the engineers, who, after all, are more of the scientists in the process than you are. And you're a little bit more of an artist and a communicator. And some of that has to do with the hierarchy that has been set up in the design team, where the owner hires the architect, and then the architect has all the consultants under them. And even the architect tries to keep their thumb on top of the builder a little bit, even though the builder is contracted separately with the owner. The idea is you don't bring the builder in until you've already finished your design, and then they're not supposed to change anything. And the whole concept from start to finish is not very collaborative.
No.
And that's changing. And that's changing regardless of what architects want or prefer. That's changing because there's been proof that more collaboration with design build, or ideally even with integrated project delivery, brings better results. And after all, that's what people want, is the better results. We're just there to deliver them.
Absolutely, Dave. I appreciate it. So, Dave, third and final question, and the theme behind the whole show: why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? Well, okay, so here I'll say that one of my children, I have two children, and one of them was interested in going into architecture. And my friends in architecture were going, oh my God, you have to discourage them. This is terrible. For the reasons that I mentioned before, you don't earn enough, you don't get enough respect, all this kind of stuff, which I don't really agree with. I think that if you have the rare gift to have the opportunity to do work that you love, that's the greatest thing.
Yeah. And
I've supported my family. I've raised my family. I don't need to earn as much as a doctor or a lawyer. But anyway, so why do I do what I do? It goes far beyond being an architect. The reason why I do what I'm doing now is not what you might think about as a tech entrepreneur. I'm not doing it, first of all, to make money. I'm very comfortable from my career as an architect. I am doing it because of my mission, my vision, that the process of design construction can be so much better for everyone involved. And by now, I have a team who I love and respect very much. And I'm doing it for them too, because I want them to succeed. I feel like I'm more at the end of my career, but they're all really amazing, brilliant people at the beginning of their careers. And I just love to see how much they grow and imagine the kind of things that they'll do to change the world in the future. This is just the beginning for them.
Well, fantastic, Dave. And I appreciate it. Probably the most, or the consistent premise on all of these is the inspiration, the motivation, and kind of just passing the torch along to these kind of younger professionals. And that is the point of all of this, to share your story, hear it, and be able to inspire the younger professionals coming up in the industry, whether they are in tech, whether they're in home building, architecture, engineering, whatever that may be. We all have these comparisons. It's an incredibly diverse industry, and we'd love to showcase every little finer element of that. So thank you very much, Dave. I really appreciate your time today, and have a great rest of your weekend.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
really enjoyed talking with you.
Yep. Have a good one. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that concludes our 9th episode. I'm your host, Mark Sherlock, and always remember why you do what you do.